Morning, everybody. Qroo here. It is 5:24 in the morning where I'm at. Been up for about an hour and a half. Yeah, early riser. And just figured I would do a video talking about terminar, and that means to finish. And specifically, I will be answering a question from one of the members of my private learning group, the Qroo Spanish Crew. Have a lot of interaction with the folks there. And this is what he wrote, and I thought it would be a great video. I'm confused about the difference between terminar por, terminar en, terminar de, terminar plus the Spanish gerund, and terminar plus the, and I'm thinking the participle, past participle, I'm guessing. They all have different meanings and uses. You know, if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you've heard me say when you're learning Spanish verbs, it's always a good idea to learn the appropriate preposition with them so you'll always know to use it. A great example of that is the Spanish verb enamorarse, to fall in love. So if you only learned it that way, just as, you know, an isolated verb, and you start to put it in sentences, chances are you would use it with the preposition con, which is the Spanish equivalent of with, because we fall in love with people in English. That's how we phrase it. But you would be wrong, because in Spanish they use de, enamorarse de. So when you learn verbs, it's a great idea to learn the preposition. Now, by this point in the video, you're probably like, where are you going with this, Paul? I thought we were talking about terminar. We are. You see, there are verbs out there, like terminar, that don't just have one preposition or one type of usage, like enamorarse de, which means on your word list, you should have multiple entries, you know, with different prepositions, or say the Spanish gerund after it, you know, break it down into formulas, so you can remember how to use this and when. Now, before we start sticking on, you know, prepositions, just let's look at terminar all by itself. Terminar means to finish or to end. And, you know, it's just like in English. You know, I can finish something, you know, that's transitive. Terminé la tarea. I finished the homework. And it can be intransitive, meaning, you know, something can end or finish itself. La película termina a las 10. The movie ends at 10. So it works like English, so you won't have any trouble with that. All right, let's go ahead and start popping on some prepositions here. We'll start with de. And I like to break things down into a formula so they fit on your word list really nicely and they're easy to remember. So our formula is going to be terminar de plus infinitive. And the infinitive is the unconjugated form of the verb. We're just going to take it and pop it into our formula. We just have to remember to, you know, conjugate that first one, terminar. And this means to finish doing something. Terminé de leer el libro. I finished reading the book. ¿Ya terminaste de comer? Did you already finish eating? Now, you folks who are just beginners, and maybe you're in my Spanish master course, you know, learning all those different patterns like tengo que, you know, plus infinitive, quiero plus infinitive, puedo plus infinitive, those kinds of things. You can pop this in. For example, you could say, I have to finish reading the book, right? You're just taking your first like little pattern you learned in the master's course, tengo que, and then you're popping in terminar de, okay, then read the book, leer el libro, and you're putting it all together. Tengo que terminar de leer el libro. So that's how it works, you know? You're just learning little patterns, and then you're just popping them together to create your own sentences. And they may be sentences you've never seen or heard before in your whole life. You may never have heard somebody in Spanish say, I have to finish reading the book. But you just made a sentence that's grammatically correct, knowing the little patterns. You know, I honestly believe that this is the fastest way for adults, especially English-speaking adults, to learn Spanish. Learn the patterns, use your logic, use your knowledge of English, and create sentences. This is going to get you speaking very quickly, long before you developed an ear for the language. All right, let's go ahead and get back on this. Our next one on our list is going to be terminar en plus noun. And this is going to refer to like some type of an outcome. It's like it ends in something or results in something. And this is going to be pretty similar to English. You shouldn't have too much trouble with this one. La discusión terminó en una pelea. The argument ended in a fight. El viaje terminó en tragedia. The trip ended in tragedy. See, I think that's pretty similar. Next one on our list is terminar por plus infinitive. And this means to end up doing something. Al final, in the end, and that's a good one for your word list, al final. Terminé por aceptar la oferta. In the end, I ended up accepting the offer. Con el tiempo, over time. Another good one for your word list. Terminaron por entender la situación. Over time, they ended up understanding the situation. Now, our next one also means to end up doing something. It's going to be a lot more common just in regular conversation than the one I just showed you, and it's going to use the Spanish gerund. And it is terminar plus the Spanish gerund, el gerundio. María terminó llorando en la fiesta. Maria ended up crying at the party. And siempre termino pagando. I always end up paying. And another one we'll throw in there, because this is just so useful. You're going to be using it all the time. Maybe not just for these, these types of examples, but just in general. Juan y Carlos siempre terminan hablando de política. Juan and Carlos always end up talking about politics. Shouldn't do that, politics. Yeah, pisses people off. Next one on our list is terminar plus the past participle. And the past participle in English would be like the ed ending, like liked, played, that sort of thing. In Spanish, for AR verbs, it'd be ADO, ADO. And for ER and IR verbs, it'd be EDO. That's the past participle. I have videos on it. You can watch them later. And with this one, it means like to end up in a certain state. And personally, I don't use this one a lot. I don't see it as being super useful, but, he asked about it, so I thought I'd throw it in here. El evento terminó cancelado. The event that we're literally saying like ended, canceled, but we're saying like ended up being canceled, even though we don't have the verb in there, And we could add it. You will occasionally see the verb, like el evento terminó siendo cancelado. The meeting or the event, ended up being canceled. So you'll see it a couple different ways. Another example, let's say el coche or el carro, depending where you're at, terminó destrozado. Ended up wrecked or destroyed. Like I said, I don't think it's super useful. It wouldn't make my word list, but you got to be you, There are other ways to express these things, and that's why. One of them is with the verb quedar. I have some other videos maybe about that. I think I've mentioned it. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And our next one is terminar con. And I don't have a plus on my little formula here yet because I'm actually going to give you 3 variations of it. All right. So our first one is terminar con plus a person. And this is a very common way to say, somebody broke up with someone. Juan terminó con su novia. Juan broke up with his girlfriend. Very common way to do that. The next formula will be terminar con with like a thing or a task. And this means to be done with it, to be finished with it. Terminé con el informe. I finished, the report. I'm done with the report. And the last little formula, little breakdown from this particular one is going to be terminar con with a noun. And that's like to end up with something, because we're literally saying to end up with something. So it's not going to mean necessarily be done with something or to break up with someone. You'll see what I mean. It's more of a literal translation. ¿Sabes qué? You know what? Vas a terminar con salsa en la camisa. You're going to end up with sauce on your shirt. See, that's a literal translation. We're not saying, to finish something off or be done with something. So just making you aware of that one. Now, one thing I want to point out now is this video was all about the verb terminar, to finish, and I was answering a particular question, from the member of the Qroo Spanish Crew. There is another very common Spanish verb that means to finish, and it is acabar. And a lot of times they're presented together, because there's a lot of overlap. Sometimes you can choose one or the other with these same constructions, but sometimes you're going to get a very different result. And so that's what I'm going to touch on right now, because we just talked about terminar con, and I'm going to talk about acabar con. Acabar con is going to have a much stronger meaning. And it's usually used to mean like to wipe out something, to destroy it. And in the case of a person, it can even mean to kill them. So that's why you have to be careful, if you're playing like with acabar and terminar and kind of, interchanging them. And sometimes you can't. But let's say we're talking about, the breakup situation. And they broke up, then terminar is the way you want to go. Juan terminó con María. Juan broke up with Maria. But if you say Juan acabó con María, people are going to go, ¿qué? Because it could mean, he killed her, or, he, destroyed her career, did something really, really bad. It's strong, okay, especially with people. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. it does have usages. For example, let's say the government, is going to put an end to corruption. Then this is the one to go with. It's nice and strong. El gobierno busca acabar con la corrupción. The government's looking to, put an end to corruption. This is a good construction for that. Oh, one more difference I want to point out between acabar and terminar, and that is with the preposition de. Remember when we kicked this whole thing off, terminar de plus infinitive is to, finish doing something. Well, acabar de plus infinitive is to have just done something. And it is super useful. Most of the time you're going to be using this in the present tense, like, I just spoke with Maria. Acabo de hablar con Maria. See, it's present tense. I just spoke with Maria. I just painted the house. Acabo de pintar la casa. I don't know how many little rabbit holes and tangents I went down in this particular video. It might be a new record. For those of you that are still with us here at the end, thank you very much for sticking around. And until next time, hasta luego. Oh, don't forget the thumbs up too, but appreciate it. Hasta luego.